There is a silent epidemic growing behind closed doors, hidden in browser tabs and late-night scrolls. It's seen an 800% surge in interest this past year, yet it's the one thing nobody dares to mention at the dinner table. We're not just talking about a habit, we're talking about gooning, a state of total sensory hijack, where hours, even days, vanish into a loop of artificial euphoria. But where does self-pleasure end and self-erasure begin? Today, we're dissecting the science of the plateau state and what happens to your brain when you refuse to come back to reality. To understand the scale of this phenomenon, we have to look at the language being created around it. In the past, the word goon simply referred to a low-level thug or a mindless minion for a villain. But today, the internet has reclaimed and twisted that definition into something far more clinical, yet diabolical. In this subculture, users don't just watch content, they consume what they call goon fuel. This isn't just a casual video, it's a high-octane, hyper-stimulating external trigger designed specifically to keep the human nervous system locked in a state of hyper-arousal for hours on end. And because the brain eventually hits a ceiling of stimulation, users engage in hab-jumping, a ritual of preloading dozens of browser tabs and rapidly switching between them to maintain a constant stream of novelty. It's a digital ecosystem built on feeding, where users share increasingly extreme content to keep others trapped in the loop. But there is a critical distinction we need to make here between this and edging. Edging is actually a recognized clinical term used in sex therapy to help individuals gain control over their physical responses. It has a goal, a technique, and a stopping point. Gooning, however, is the exact opposite. It has no finish line. There is no intention to climax or resolve the tension. Instead, the goal is to inhabit the plateau stage, that high-pressure zone of arousal just before the peak, and stay there indefinitely. By refusing to cross the finish line, you are essentially tricking your brain into a state of permanent ego death. While many users describe this as a form of meditative bliss, from a neurological perspective, you aren't achieving enlightenment. You are simply holding your brain's reward system hostage. You've moved from being a participant in your own life to becoming a literal goon in the original sense, a mindless minion, not to a villain, but to your own dopamine receptors. The terminology might feel like a game, but as we're about to see, the biological price of staying in this plateau is anything but a joke. To understand why this is so addictive, we need to look under the hood at the biological hardware. When you engage in a gooning session, you aren't just having a long period of self-pleasure. You are essentially rewiring your neural pathways in real time. fMRI scans of brains during chronic pornographic binges show a striking pattern. The prefrontal cortex, which acts as the captain of your ship responsible for logic, willpower, and executive function, effectively goes offline. Meanwhile, the reward centers are screaming at full volume. This leads to a phenomenon known as downregulation. Think of your brain's dopamine receptors like tiny microphones waiting to pick up signals of pleasure. When you blast them with the high-decibel, high-frequency stimulation of an 8-hour goon session, the brain protects itself by turning down the volume. It physically reduces the number of available receptors to handle the overload. The consequence? A graying out of reality. When you aren't gooning, normal life, a sunset, a good meal, a conversation with a friend simply doesn't carry enough signal to be heard by your numbed receptors. Everything feels muted. You aren't just bored. You are biologically incapable of feeling joy from everyday things. This is where neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change its structure, becomes a double-edged sword. Your brain is incredibly efficient. It strengthens the connections you use most. If you spend your time in a hyper-aroused goon state, your brain builds a superhighway to that behavior, making it your default setting for stress relief or boredom. Over time, the gray matter in the dorsal cingulate actually begins to alter. This changes how you anticipate rewards, creating a dysfunctional, enhanced preference for novelty. Essentially, you are training your brain to become a novelty-seeking missile. But because of downregulation, that missile never actually hits the target of satisfaction. You need more tabs, more goon fuel, and longer sessions just to feel a fraction of what you felt the first time. The captain has left the bridge. the microphones are turned off, and the ship is stuck in a feedback loop that it no longer has the logic to break. You are no longer just using a tool for pleasure. You have become the subject of a biological takeover. In the gooning community, there is a recurring description of what it feels like to be 8 hours deep into a session. They call it the goon state, a sense of meditative ego death. They describe it as freeing, a place where the noise of the world, the pressure of social media, and the anxieties of a post-pandemic reality finally fall silent. In this state, users feel they've transcended their own identity, achieving a trance-like mental focus that feels like ultimate control. But here is the irony. What feels like spiritual freedom is actually a chemical cage. You aren't escaping your ego. You are drowning it in a flood of dopamine. This ego death is actually the biological shutdown of your higher brain functions. When you are in the plateau stage for hours on end, you aren't finding yourself, you are hiding from the pain of real life. For many, this has become a desperate form of self-regulation, a way to numb the mood drops and social isolation that have spiked since 2020. Think about the math of that freedom. Let's do a simple, terrifying calculation. 1 8-hour gooning session. If you do this once a week, you are burning nearly 2 months of your waking life every year just staring at preloaded tabs. In those 8 hours, you could have flown halfway across the world. You could have learned a new language, finished a book, or built a real, tangible connection with another human being. But in the goon state, time doesn't just pass, it's devoured. You think you're borrowing happiness from tomorrow to pay for today, but the interest rate is catastrophic. When you finally wake up from that 8-hour trance, the world has moved on without you, and you're left standing exactly where you were, only now. You're exhausted, depleted, and even further behind. You aren't finding peace in that dopamine loop. You're just paying for an illusion with the only currency that truly matters, your time. This isn't a meditative retreat. It's an iron cage built of pixels and neurotransmitters, and the longer you stay inside, the harder it is to remember what life looked like outside the bars. Then comes the moment of impact. The second the screen goes dark, as the blue light fades, the artificial euphoria vanishes instantly, replaced by a crushing, physical weight. This is the goon crash. Scientists have found that immediately following these marathon sessions, subjects report a rapid nosedive into intense negative emotions, shame, disgust, anger, and a profound sense of hopelessness. The contrast is brutal. You go from feeling like a god in a digital trance to feeling utterly hollow in a silent room. And this isn't just post-nut clarity. It's a massive neurochemical withdrawal. Your brain, which was just redlining its dopamine production, suddenly hits a wall. Research into problematic porn use, or PPU, shows a direct correlation here. The easiest way to diagnose a pornography disorder is simply to look at the length of the sessions. The longer the goon session, the more likely the individual is to suffer from clinical sexual dysfunction and a total loss of interest in real-life partners. But here is the most diabolical part of the cycle. You might be sitting there right now, watching this very video, hearing the science, and feeling that knot of guilt in your stomach, yet you still feel the pull to open another tab. This is the impaired executive function we talked about earlier. Your logic recognizes the damage, but your amygdala is already screaming for the next hit to numb the shame you're feeling right now. It's a self-perpetuating trap. The shame of gooning makes you want to escape, and the only escape you've trained your brain to use is more gooning. You aren't just fighting a habit, you are fighting a biological feedback loop that is designed to keep you paralyzed. The statistics are clear. Since the pandemic, Pornhub views spiked by 24%, and with it, the severity of these binge behaviors. We are using instant, artificial happiness to self-regulate our pain. But in doing so, we are incinerating our ability to feel genuine satisfaction. You're left in a state of quantitative escalation, where you need more time, more tabs, and more extreme content just to feel normal, while your real world, your real relationships, and your real potential slowly wither away in the shadows of that dark screen. So, how do we fix a brain that's been hijacked? If your neural pathways have been hacked by the 3 A's: accessibility, affordability, and anonymity, then the only way to win is to intentionally build a roadmap out of the maze. You can't rely on sheer willpower when your prefrontal cortex is offline. You have to rewire the environment before you can rewire the brain. Think of this as setting up a battlefield environment. First, you have to kill the anonymity. Gooning thrives in the dark, behind locked doors and hidden browser tabs. To break the spell, you must commit to using your devices only in communal spaces. When there is even the potential for another human to see you, your brain's social judgment centers kick back in, acting as a natural emergency brake for impulsive behavior. Next, you have to disrupt the accessibility. Simply closing your jumping tabs isn't enough. You need to create technical friction. Install DNS filters at the router level. That 5 to 10 second delay while a site fails to load is a critical window. It's just enough time for your logical brain to wake up and intervene before the dopamine surge takes over. Finally, you must replace goon fuel with life fuel. Dopamine from gooning is cheap. It requires zero effort and yields zero growth. To heal, you need to engage in activities that require physical movement. The moment the urge strikes, do a set of push-ups or go for a run. You are forcing your nervous system to engage with the physical world, shifting the blood flow from the reward centers back to the motor cortex. We aren't just trying to stop a bad habit, we are utilizing neuroplasticity to our advantage. Just as your brain built a superhighway to addiction, it can build a path back to reality. It starts by making the wrong things difficult and the right things inevitable. You aren't just fighting an impulse. You are strategically reclaiming your autonomy, one friction point at a time. At the end of the day, it is important to remember that your value as a human being is not defined by your mistakes or the loops your brain has been trapped in. If you are feeling that crushing weight of shame right now, know this: you aren't broken. You are simply a biological being living in an environment that was designed to exploit your deepest vulnerabilities. The pandemic, the isolation, and the relentless accessibility of the digital world have turned our brains into entities that are starving for comfort. And gooning, in a tragic way, feels like a warm embrace, but it's an embrace filled with poison that you've been giving yourself just to survive the day. But your brain possesses an incredible quality called neuroplasticity. Those neural pathways that feel permanently etched in stone can be healed. The shame you feel isn't a dead end. It's a signal from the most human part of you, a call for help from the captain of your ship trying to find the way back to the bridge. Don't look at yourself as a gooner or a failure. Look at yourself as someone who is injured and needs to heal. You deserve a real connection, not one filtered through a high-speed internet connection, but a real hand to hold and a real partner to share a life with. You deserve to be the driver of your own life, not a passenger in a dopamine-fueled trance. We are going to keep tracking the latest research on sexual health and brain recovery because this is becoming a central part of our daily lives. If you want more of our personal thoughts on how to navigate this, you can check out our latest podcast right here. Remember, the road back to reality starts with a single point of friction. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.